What's up, everybody? It is Parlor back again with another ratting video for you today. And you might be saying, Parlor, what else do you have to teach us about ratting? You already told us the RAT acronym, which is true, and if you haven't seen that video, go to my YouTube channel. It should be the first video that pops up, Intro to Ratting. That video mainly deals with the main steps every basic rat needs to do. And I'm not going to spoil them because you need to go watch that video, but today, we're doing a more advanced class. We're talking about logical fallacies. Alright? Now, what the hell is a logical fallacy? Now, what is a logical fallacy? It's a pretty good question. If you've been debating, or even if you're new debating, you should know and learn what logical fallacies are. But for those who don't know, logical fallacies are basically arguments that you make that don't really directly work with the claim your opponent made, right? There's 24 that we mainly use. There's probably more. But, for example, the most common one is the ad hominem, right? The ad hominem is basically when you attack the person's character instead of their argument. Basically, it's the equivalent of this.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Now, we're not using ad hominem, okay? Everybody knows how to see and witness ad hominem and knows how to defend against it. It's a pretty easy one to defend against. What I got for you today are 3 heavily underutilized fallacies, right? That I barely hear ever even mentioned in debates. And I want to show you not only how to use them traditionally to defend your points, but also how to troll with them, because that's really what ratting is. It's trolling, right? It's having a good old time, right? So I'm going to show you how to do that. And our first fallacy we're going to talk about today is the false cause fallacy.
It's all fake news. It's phony stuff. It didn't happen.
Okay, so for our first fallacy, we got the false cause fallacy, which is defined as presuming the relationship between things and saying that the first one is the cause of the second one. A more basic and simple way of defining this fallacy is that correlation does not equal causation. Right? Now, Parlor, this is like common knowledge. Everybody knows correlation does not equal causation. Why are you bringing this up? You'd be surprised how little this fallacy is brought up in debating. I rarely ever hear it. Okay? But how do I use it per se? Well, I like to use it when the opponent is using a coincidence on something that we assume is true, or that they assume people who know or debate that verse know is true, right? A good example to use for the false cause fallacy is to use Dragon Ball, especially Goku, because in anime, manga, fiction, debating overall, Goku is like a base scaling knowledge. Most people know how to scale Goku. It's very easy to do, right? And because it's so easy to do, people assume the knowledge on things, assume that people have the knowledge on things, so they present the information and expect you to know it to be true. A good example of this is saying Goku's Hakai works on ghosts, right? There's good logic for this, because Beerus destroys a ghost from the Dr. Slump anime in the filler episode of Super as shown here.
Hey, you there! Yes, you in the oversized genie pants. I don't know who you think you are, but read the room. We're in the middle of something here. Besides, I'm the star of this episode. What's happening? What are you doing to me?
It doesn't matter if you're an animal, mineral, or ghost. There's nothing in the universe Lord Beerus can't destroy.
So there are multiple false causes in this statement, right? One is that you're using a manga feed of Goku using Hakai on a anime feed of Beerus being able to Hakai ghosts, and then making the correlation that Beerus can use Hakai on ghosts, Goku can use Hakai on ghosts, right? That's one false cause. But two is that Beerus can destroy ghosts, but there's no reason to believe that because Goku also knows Hakai, that the Hakai is as strong as Beerus's and can destroy ghosts, right? So in an argument, if someone presented you with this argument, you would say, hey, wait a second, what is the correlation between these two things? And then you would use the examples I just showed, and they would have to prove it, which would usually catch them off guard because this knowledge is supposed to be common knowledge. There's no reason I would have to prove it generally. So that's a good way to use the false cause fallacy. Now we are on to our second fallacy, which is personal incredulity.
Confusion of the highest order.
For our second argument, we have personal incredulity, right? Personal incredulity is basically when your opponent is so confused by your argument, or they don't understand your argument to the point where they just simply say it can't be true because they don't understand it. Again, this is another one where I rarely hear it in the debate. I don't think I've ever heard this be used in the debate community, right? And for us rats, it's very, very good to use, honestly, because we're using rat arguments, so we're going to be confusing our opponent anyways. And one of the best way to use it is this. When it comes to personal incredulity, the main thing that's going to happen, this is basic ratting. Whatever you rat, all of your opponents, when they catch on to you ratting, they're all going to sound exactly like this. I got a live clip of it right here.
Oh shit! A rat! There's a rat! There's a motherfucking rat! There's a motherfucking rat!
So basically, once they've called out you being a rat, it's quite simple. This is when you strike them with personal incredulity, right? You basically ask them, do you want me to repeat my point? Or repeat my argument? And they'll probably say yes. You got to repeat it word for word, bar for bar. Okay? Because then, if they continue to call it out as a rat afterwards, this is when you hit them. You say, well, you're just confused on the point or don't understand my point, so you're calling it a rat. You're calling it untrue. So I want to call fallacy of personal incredulity on you. And basically, now they have to prove your argument is a rat, which honestly is kind of hard to do, right? Depending on your argument, depending on your rat. So if they can't prove the argument wrong, you win the point, right? Or they have to concede, depending on the argument again. Yeah, so that's it for part 2. Now it's time for fallacy 3, the cream of the crop, the genetic fallacy.
That's a nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Oh, the genetic fallacy. How I love this fallacy, okay? Now, I might have said I might have never heard personal incredulity in a debate, but I guarantee you I have never heard the genetic fallacy used in a debate, and it comes up all the time, okay? What's the genetic fallacy? What are we even talking about here? The genetic fallacy is when you say an argument isn't true simply because of the source, not what it says, because of the source. How often do you see someone say, "Ooh, that's not a valid translation," or "You're using Wikipedia, you're using Google to find this"? It happens so often that it's insane, okay? And it's the easiest one to troll with. Now, Parlor, how the hell do we troll with the genetic fallacy? How do we even do that? Well, it's quite simple, actually. You know, you can literally just make shit up. And I know I said in ratting, my definition of ratting, you're not supposed to make shit up. But with the genetic fallacy, you can practically make shit up. Go on Wikipedia, edit the Wikipedia article, right? Make it say whatever you want. They're going to call it out as, oh, you're using Wikipedia? Say, prove it wrong. That's all you have to say. Prove it wrong. The real challenge of this fallacy, and how do you abuse it, is that you have to make it somewhat believable and unprovable, right? And there are certain ways you can do this. So an example of how you'd use this is a random example I came up with. It's not necessarily a good one. It's just a random one to give you an idea thought process, because the process is going to be different depending on what you're debating, what verse you're debating, whatever, right? So I randomly went to the Dragon Ball wiki, the fandom wiki, and I found this page on Goku, and I basically edited the source and added, he is also said to be the strongest character in the verse by Akira Toriyama, even stronger than Zeno the Omni King, right? That isn't true, obviously, but let's say you sent that in, said, oh, it says it right here. Now, they can say, oh, you're using the wiki, right, or you're using this source. Well, you can say, well, you have to prove the source wrong. You can't just say the source itself is wrong. And bada bing, bada boom, you've kind of trapped them in this genetic fallacy type deal. Now, there are ways you can do this without lying specifically. I mean, it might come up naturally, right? You might find a translation for something or whatever, Japanese, and they might ask you, you know, where'd you get this translation from? And you can use it in that situation as well. There's many situations you can use this, but I'm telling you, if it comes up, it will slam anybody, okay? It's the ultimate rat technique, okay? It'll beat anything. So, what have we learned today? In conclusion, we have learned how to use 3 of the most underrated fallacies in a debate, okay? And how to be a rat with them. If you didn't learn that, you weren't paying attention. Fuck you. I'm tired. I'm done making this. Have a nice day.
Rats, we are the rats. Celebrate another one a birthday batch. It's your birthday today. Take an ice cream, it's on its way. And you're such a good boy this year. Open up your gifts while we all cheer.